Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another Coffee and Christ on the Sunday morning with me, Daniel P. Riley, the Iron Sage, Michael Bacchioni, Life Talks, and Jonathan the Wellness Dad joining me. We might have a couple more folks pop in at some point, so we'll keep that kind of fluid. I'm going to put my comments up on the stage here so I can keep an eye on them. But today's discussion and episode is called The Enemy Among Us. And I'm going to start the show with a clip that illustrates just what I'm talking about here. And we'll get into some conversation. This is Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey.
So they are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is bullshit. This was an agent recklessly using power that resulted in somebody dying, getting killed. As soon as it happened and we learned of the incident, we had several priorities. The first, of course, was to get the victim to the hospital and to get care as soon as possible. To the family, I'm so deeply sorry. There's nothing that I can say right now that's going to make you or your relatives or the friends of the victim feel any better. There were, I believe, 2 Minneapolis police officers that responded and were in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. The second was to get ICE off of the scene. There were dozens, if not hundreds, of ICE and federal officers that were there at the time. Having them there was only causing more chaos. Having them there was only making a difficult situation even more problematic, and one that, yes, they created themselves. There's little I can say, again, that'll make this situation better, but I do have a message for our community, for our city, and I have a message for ICE. To ICE, get the fuck out of Minneapolis.
So, since this is a biblical discussion show, good morning, Paladin Dragoon, and welcome to the crew, John Webster.
Hey, guys.
Morning.
Since this is a biblical show, I'm going to illustrate a biblical point, specifically the wise words from Proverbs. That's Proverbs 6, 12 through 19, I believe 19, maybe 15. Scoundrels, villains are they who deal in crooked talk, shifty of eye, feet ever moving, pointing with fingers. They have perversity in their hearts, always plotting evil, sowing discord. Therefore, their doom comes suddenly. In an instant, they are crushed beyond cure. The reason I wanted to start this discussion with a specific Proverbs verse or verses is because, yes, I would believe it was yesterday or possibly Friday afternoon, the body cam footage from the ICE agent who fired on this young woman and killed her, which is extremely unfortunate that it had to go down that way. But that body cam footage shows that he was in direct danger from her and her vehicle after the agents asked her repeatedly to exit the vehicle while it was in the way, in the middle of them attempting to operate their own vehicle and get it out of the slush and snow, in which she inserted herself without actual provocation. And Mayor Frey there immediately says they're going to spin this while he's spinning it. live on camera.
Always.
If that isn't scurrilous villainy in biblical context, I don't know what is. And as soon as that body cam footage came out and showed what actually happened from the position of the individual who was almost struck by the vehicle, it destroyed their narrative, destroyed the spin that he tried to lay out.
Well, Frey is guilty as much as Waltz is guilty. All these guys are guilty for instigating this stuff. If
Exactly.
if they hadn't of demonized ICE and the federal government the way they have, and immigration the way they have, and incited this type of violence, incited this type of harassment of police officers while they're trying to do their jobs, she'd still be alive. She's dead
That's true.
because they told them to put yourself in harm's way. Take one for the team. I mean, these guys literally put her behind the wheel of that car in a caravan that had been harassing these cops all day long. And then she has the audacity to try to hit one with a vehicle and try to kill them with a vehicle. Whether that was her intention or not doesn't matter. We've seen all the videos. She had been there all day with those people harassing cops all day long. And then she decides that she's going to drive into them. She shouldn't have been there. She put herself there. But it was the politicians that encouraged her to put herself there. At least
They
that's my
created a
opinion.
hierarchy of their own intention over what we would call the natural law.
Yeah, absolutely. They brought chaos to order.
Right. Sowing discord.
Yes, absolutely.
And this is rampant now. There's misinformation, disinformation, two separate things, because one is a misdirection and the other is an outright lie.
Absolutely. And what are they trying to misdirect from? We already know that, right?
Well, it depends on the situation.
You're talking in general.
Yeah, I'm speaking in generalities at the moment. I always try to operate under the assumption, and it may be somewhat belittling, but I operate under the assumption that people are stupid, not evil. So when I look at these things, I'm mourned for the loss of the woman.
Absolutely.
I mourn for, even though it's antithetical to certain, I guess we would say, doctrine beliefs, I mourn for her wife, because she, I believe, was married to the other woman who had gotten out of the vehicle and started recording the whole thing in order to try to create some sort of gotcha moment that they could post on social media. But I hesitate to say that she wouldn't have been there if they hadn't have ginned up the narrative. Only because we all have our own personal intentionality. We have our own moral structure. We have our own decisions to make, our own choices to make.
It was her choice.
Yeah, she could have just as easily been a quote unquote ally to these groups by staying on her phone, not getting in a car and physically harassing and then threatening this agent with her vehicle.
She made a choice. As a mother, she chose her activism over her children. As a wife, she chose her activism over her marriage. She chose these things. This was her choice. Absolutely. And she could have chosen, like you said, to be a screen warrior. She could have been on her laptop or on her phone and just, social media activism. She could have been behind a desk somewhere. She didn't have to be behind a wheel of a car leading a caravan that was obstructing law enforcement all day long. She didn't have to do any of that stuff. It was her choice. Absolutely.
Yeah. But it made me think about the fact that there is a spiritual conspiracy underneath everything. Not just a political, not just a human interest darkness to all this that's been going on, but if you truly grasp God as the infinite above us all, the argument, that Bandy's about in a lot of theological discussions is, if you can believe in a greater moral good, why can't you believe in a greater evil?
Well, the Bible says that we wrestle against spiritual principalities. We're not wrestling against flesh and blood. Everything's spiritual.
Yep.
As Christians, we're seeing, we have discernment. We can see the devil is behind all of this stuff. The division, the corruption. Is that what you're saying? Is that the direction
Yep.
you're going with?
Yeah, and the manipulation of it all.
Oh, absolutely.
Each of these circumstances was a manipulation series of dominoes that led to this particular woman's death. And
Absolutely.
not to go too far down the rabbit hole of it, but you have to wonder if there is a design that God has put in place for all people in the course and path of their lives, then there could, in theory, be a design that works counter to that in order to disrupt it. And what might this woman have done in the years to come that would have been what God had designed for her if the enemy had not manipulated these circumstances into her death? Scary thought.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's definitely believe that God's plan is ever moving, and the enemy, it makes sense. It makes too much sense for the enemy not to have a plan. And then there's also the third plan, right? Like the human nature, the human plan,
Mm-hmm.
where we go away from God because we're trying to be our own God.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that the enemy at hand? Sometimes.
I believe so.
I personally think sometimes, because like we've talked about in the past, like human nature tries to kick in too. And they just like, it's the moment where it's like, oh, I got it. I don't need anybody else. I got it. So it's the lovely ego.
I wouldn't put too much power in the devil's hands. I mean, he's powerful, but he tempts us. He turns us towards evil, and we go.
Yeah, that's
our
where
choice,
I'm going with this.
Yeah.
Not that it's not the direct function of human nature to make these decisions that cause these things to happen, but that the external, or even, for lack of a better term, spiritually internal manipulation is, I know, my daughter and I call it goblin brain. I was talking with Jonathan about this over the holiday, where I'm having a grand old day, and then just this weird errant thought of, yeah, I could push this guy into traffic crosses my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have the physical capacity to just shove this guy in front of a bus.
Yep.
Not that I would, not that I ever thought this guy crossed me in any way where I would want him dead, just the random nudge out of nowhere. My daughter and I call it goblin brain, but in some regard, I wonder if that random nudge is an external voice in my head.
There's this old movie called Fallen. I don't know if you guys ever seen it, with Denzel Washington.
Yep,
great movie. Really good kind of supernatural horror. Anyways, Denzel is having a conversation with his cop buddies, his police officer, and one of them's like, "So you don't take bribes?" And he's like, "No, I don't, but I don't judge." And he said, "Well, why not?" He said, "Well, I have self-control." I could reach across this table and snatch your heart right out of your chest and hold your beating heart in my hand. But I have self-control. I don't do that. I could do that, but I don't do that. Why? Because he has a choice and he chooses not to do that. Some people have that moral good in them not to do those stupid things. We have a conscience, right? And some people, like you're saying, is goblin brain. They just do it anyways. They don't even think
Yeah,
about
well,
it.
I wonder,
They just
like I
jump
said, I
on it.
wonder if Goblin Brain is an external force working upon my mind because of that. I also operate under the assumption that if God created all of us, then we start at a default setting of moral good.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I agree.
And that means that external forces altered that over the course of time. External forces being our environment, etc. And it's sort of backed up by one of my various businesses, in that I own a childcare center. So I watch children on any given day, and they don't start out vicious. They're uncontrollable because they don't quite understand and everything's new and they're trying to figure out how it all works.
Mm-hmm.
But even the ones that are a bit more aggressive than others, the moment that the child that they're aggressive with starts to cry, the flicker of oops crosses their face. Like, I didn't mean to hurt them.
Mm-hmm.
So I struggle with default, for lack of a better term, negativity. And it's part of my research into psychology is whether or not that's a real thing or not, But in that regard, what if it's always a choice? Even when it's in our own minds, when that dark thought occurs, we still have an A-B situation. A, we say yes to that dark thought. B, we say no to it. And like your quote from the movie Fallen, I have self-control, therefore I choose A.
Mm-hmm.
And it also reminded me of, was it Michael Douglas or Kirk Douglas? I can't remember. The movie Falling Down. The guy has he's like an office worker, has a complete meltdown, and just goes on this madcap adventure of insanity and violence.
Yes.
And that same thing, that's sort of choosing the B every time.
But he was mentally disturbed. So I think in his reality, though, and this might actually coincide with what this woman was thinking, she thought she was the good guy.
Right. That was the next point I was going to bring up. Thank you.
Yeah.
They say the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and that's the illusion. And also why I think that it's stupid, not evil, when people do stuff like this, is that they don't realize they don't have, whether it be the capacity, the intellectual curiosity, or ability to morally or rationally think through these things. See you, Paladin Dragoon. Have a great day. To be put in these situations and make a moral choice.
Yeah, I think the looking at people as stupid in the context that you said is a really important factor, because speaking on the first topic that was brought up, I'd mentioned I hadn't seen enough kind of videos and context to really make an opinion. But what came into my mind is, like, if you look at both people on both sides of this conflict as a father, because I think a lot of people will step into this arena. As I mentioned, everyone that I can already see the polarization, and the media is blasting this, and I see
Mhm.
so many people divided. And I mean, what just came into my mind again is just very kind of similar, not completely, but same thing with the vaccine. So myself, like, I'm not, I'm over here, and finding those words of wisdom um, is I think helpful to your point. Daniel, you look at people as stupid in a certain lens, right? Because
Yeah,
that can
I
slip
don't
into
mean it
pride.
as I don't mean it
Yeah,
as cruel. I mean it
yeah.
as just a
Ignorant.
statement of the definition of stupid, which is uneducated.
Yes, because the alternative, because obviously the fall in that is pride, because it's like these guys are stupid, I'm so smart, and then the other side is, but I think because I agree with that, because the alternative is these people evil, right? And these
Mhm.
people good, right? And it's like
Right.
that's why I say, like, what popped into my head was like looking at these two conflicts, these two opposing views, like, this conflict that happened between these two people, as like a father, and it's like, you know that kind of sounds pretty straightforward to look at it, right? Like that. But I think a lot of people, and there's so much media, and it's just like how quickly people will just fall into, okay, I'm on the Democratic side versus the Republican side, versus looking at it like through the eyes of, because that's what a judge is supposed to do, a good judge, genuinely look at it like, okay, what exactly happened? Look at all angles. And when I see that person, that the clip that you started out with, like, Ice, get the fuck out of here. I
Mhm.
don't look at that as someone who looks at it like a judge. I would look at a
No.
judge saying, what happened on the left here? What happened on the right side, right? Or, whatever words you use. And, what happened with the ICE officer? What happened with this woman? What did she do to provoke this? What is, and you look at it. Was him shooting? Maybe not the best decision, but was it out of nowhere? No. Guy got
Mhm.
hit, ran over. Could he have shot maybe the tire? Maybe. But it's also another thing to be in that situation, right? Things happen very fast. And this woman isn't clearly innocent in this situation,
Right.
right? So I didn't see a level-headed response from that gentleman. I don't know who he is, but I
He's the mayor
saw
of
this
Minneapolis.
get the fuck out of here kind of thing. That to me is not a unifying message. Um, but I also understand it's heating, and there's all that, who knows how much, because I have to give grace to him. Who knows how much heat he's getting, and then he has to, all that. So I can't read people's hearts, but
There's two parts to that I totally agree with where you're going. One thing I will say is I don't remember who said it, but it's sort of an adage, which is in any given situation, there are two perspectives, and somewhere in between them is the truth. And that's what we're dealing with here. We have the perspective of the woman who was behind the wheel of the car, with the perspective of the ICE agent who was in front of the car, and the actual absolute truth is between them. And the absolute truth, from what I can tell based on that, is she was not where she was supposed to be. She was in the way of these people doing what they were supposed to do. They have a statute within the mandate of their job that if they are physically threatened, they respond with force. And if she had not been there, none of this would have happened. So
Yep.
in that regard, the first mistake was inserting herself in the middle of the operation. And that was her mistake. The ICE agent did not pursue her. The ICE agent did not force her in the middle of what they were doing. And he made an instinct, snap decision to save his own life in the face of potentially being killed. And that, by the letter of the law, is what they call justified.
Mhm.
So the gentleman
And-
that got ran, the gentleman that got ran over, he's the one that opened fire.
Yes.
Yeah, he fired through the windshield when she came at him.
Okay. I'm like Mike on this one. Like,
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, so there's several videos. The first video they played, you can't really see what's happening, and that's the one the media has gone with. All you can see is sort of
It's
the
the
back
footage from the
angle.
wife while she was standing by the street or by the sidewalk.
Yeah, you can't see the officer that gets hit very well from that angle. But that's the one the media went with. And let me tell you, every single media personality is sticking with their original views of that video after seeing all the other videos that's come out that show you the vehicle hitting the officer.
Mhm.
Now, the reason he drew his weapon to shoot, the whole reason he drew his weapon to shoot was because she aimed her vehicle at him. Okay. It was a split-second decision, and this guy had been hit several times before by vehicles. One time got dragged by a vehicle, same guy, and had stitches in his leg because of it. So he had been assaulted previously. Excuse me, my dog is having a fit right now.
No worries.
And he originally was hit by a vehicle. So here's his response. Okay, I think it's personal. He didn't want to get hit again. Okay, and I don't know if you guys have ever been hit by a moving vehicle. It's fun. I know somebody who has been hit by a moving vehicle. It's not fun. And so a police officer who has
1
someone
year ago.
in their
Yep.
views who is refusing orders, who has been harassing them all day long, interfering with what they're doing, points their vehicle at you, and then revs the engine, you're going to act in a split second to your training. It's going to resort to your training. And let me tell you, the training is 1+1 use of force. He is going to use deadly force because you're using deadly force. And he will shoot to kill. And it's not going to be a split second, let me shoot the tire issue. It's going to be shoot to kill. And that's
Mhm.
why you see the bullet hole in the windshield. If you guys, and I encourage you both, don't sit on the sidelines on this. Look at all the videos. Look at everything. The evidence is very clear. He was defending for his life. Now, I've seen other videos of a woman cop who was trying to get a guy out of his vehicle. A couple kids were being detained by this officer, and this kid behind the wheel of a car ran over the officer. She got off one shot, and the car killed her. So, in a situation like this, cops respond.
Well,
That's how they're
certainly,
trained.
certainly.
You know?
But I will say that past experience shapes our responses to actions as
Welcome,
well.
Christian.
Like that's just kind
Absolutely.
of how it works. And my initial, like when I first heard the kind of the synopsis of the situation, to me it was very much so like a no duh type moment. Like if anybody was put in a situation where any sort of weapon, in this case a vehicle, was being hurled at us at a speed that could cause death, you go to your training, but you also, military as well, right? Like who's going home to their family that night? Like, and it sucks because personally, okay, I posted this on the socials, like Martin Luther King Jr. is, from a historical perspective, he's one of my favorite historical figures, and he's human, so he had his faults. But one of his quotes that I absolutely love, and it's very fitting for this moment, is darkness cannot drive out darkness, light can. Hate does not get rid of hate, only love can do that.
Yes.
And for the mayor to come out and say what he said, to touch on what Mike said, that we should be speaking unity right now. Like,
yes.
the amount of polarization from both sides, mind you,
Mhm.
left, right, everybody, it's ridiculous. Like, and this is my heart talking, because I have family members that are on both sides of the aisle,
Mhm.
and it is silly at the amount of crap that they post on, either let it be celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk,
Yeah.
or completely, or the opposite, saying, making Charlie Kirk seem like he's a god.
Yes.
And it's like, no to both.
Mhm.
And it hurts my heart where we're at
Oh, absolutely,
as,
man.
in
Can I?
society. And as Christians, like, we should know that God does not call us to hate one another.
No, absolutely. Or
No.
Like, it's
celebrate
simple.
death.
Can I
Go ahead,
speak to
Christian.
the celebrity aspect of that real quick? I don't want to cut you off or anything, but
No, you're good, dude.
when I was a lot younger, at my church that I grew up in, Champion Center, up there in Tacoma, good church still, just too far of a drive. We had a guest speaker come in, and I was really nervous to, I was going through everyone, like, it was a Q&A you could go through, ask questions. Maybe he'd sign something because he was a celebrity at the time. And I got up there and I was kind of like nervous. I was younger, like maybe 8th grade, 9th grade. And he just looked at me and said, "I'm just a man. I'm just a
Mhm.
guy. I'm not,
Mhm.
I'm no different than you. God is the reason we're all here, not me." And it seemed like such a simple thing to do. Like, shout out to that guy, but like it was like, that's a really important thing to impart to somebody who's like, I was elevating him. I know at that moment I must have been elevating him above his station, above what he really was in that moment. And it was a really, really nice thing of him to do, to recognize that and to set me straight. And so, yeah, like Charlie Kirk, he was a good man. He was a godly man, but he was just that. He was a
Yes.
man. He was a servant. He wasn't. He wasn't some sort of like figure. Like we don't. I'm not going to put him on a cross and put him on a necklace. It's just not something I'm going to do.
Amen.
And I think that does speak to something you mentioned with your family. It's like people. It's one thing to venerate, but at some point, it's like this is kind of hero worship to an unhealthy degree.
Idols.
Yeah, hold no idols before me.
It's interesting because from a biblical perspective, I get where you're going, but from a human nature perspective, the idea of heroism was a state of paragon, which is that you embody the most good or morally good qualities that a human can possess. And
Yeah.
inspiration often comes from that.
Absolutely.
To a certain degree, our stories of heroism throughout time, even in the Bible, the story of David would be a biblical hero.
Yeah.
And there's no inherent harm in anyone reading the stories, the adventures of David, seeing his heroism and choosing to emulate that or to live their life in similar fashion.
Yeah. No, I think it comes down to the heart posture of the individual. It's like, if if you're performing idol worship in a sense, or if you're putting too much, if you're idolizing to a point of idolatry, I think that's what it comes down to. A lot of people can love and respect, and we can look up to these heroes of the faith and heroes of mankind without turning it into idol worship. I think just that, but that comes down to each
I think
individual.
some people, but I also think some people, to Daniel's point before, don't even like the stupid factor falls in. You know, they're
That's
worshiping
correct.
something that they think like Trump's the savior, right?
Well,
like,
it's a proxy because they're in at the time. I'll say at the moment they're incapable of grasping that everything that David was lauded for as a biblical hero was due to his fastidious love for God and choice in those matters, even in the human nature moments where he fell down and made mistakes. Those things were also given to God. But people who aren't at a position in their lives where they can really attach themselves directly to the concept of God as the fundamental creator and guide of our lives would look at David as something that they could connect to. And that, me being a writer, it's a common thing that I try to understand. One of the first tenets of good fiction writing is make your readers connect with your characters.
Yeah.
Not to me. I don't want them to connect to me as the writer. And this is a weird proxy, but follow my logic here. If I create these characters, I want people to connect with the characters and get the best information, the most moral discipline, the best ability to make a good choice out of the narrative that I've put forth, which is the guiding path that those characters go through. So, not saying this with any seriousness, but you proxy that with how we understand God. God wrote the story of each of these people's lives, and the ones that we call biblical heroes are the ones that followed the path that God laid out for them and moved as closely to that path as possible.
Well, that speaks to the human need to worship. People who don't know God, who don't have God in their heart, who have not submitted themselves.
Worship so much as connectivity.
Yeah. But it does speak to some, like, they want a savior. They want someone they can idolize. They want someone to look up to, and they just don't understand that is, for us in the faith, that's Jesus, that's God, that's the Holy Spirit. That's what all that is. I think the human want to do that, and the human tendency to do that does come from a similar place. Correct me if I'm off base here, but that's
no, I think so. I think
no,
there's
you're
definitely
on the right track.
yeah. Like,
It
I've
might
wanted to
be-
follow so many people, you know, and then as I've gotten older, you start, you look at like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
That's the
You
point
know?
I was going to get to.
Yeah.
It might be a maturity thing.
Yeah.
At a certain point in your growth, your spiritual growth, your mental capacity growth, as you get older in life, it becomes easier to understand the grand design of the creator versus when you're young, you follow your dad. So you see in theory, I saw that look, Jonathan, but in theory,
I hope you were going to see that look.
yeah. Considering
I love my dad. I love my dad, but sometimes some of the things I'm like, I definitely wouldn't follow that.
But as a child,
Yeah.
you do.
Yes.
As a child, you follow your dad around and you emulate him because he is the representation of what you will become. When you get older, and your sense of self develops past that into your teens, your late teens, and your early adulthood, that's when you start seeing your own path more clearly. And if your dad is a good man, your dad has kept you on the path you were supposed to be on to begin with, so it's an easy transition. The discord comes when your dad is not, and the path that he set you on has put you far, far away from where God wanted you to be in the first place. So then you're nowhere near the path you're supposed to be on. You have to find it yourself, because that's the fundamental purpose of parenting. Even, not just from a biblical perspective, but from a nature perspective. A parent's job from a nature perspective is to make sure that their progeny continue to exist.
Yeah.
And if they don't guide you the right way, it increases the likelihood of your death.
Or at least your spiritual death, perhaps.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and in the same regard, spiritual death. So as a child, the males that you have around you and the males that you're exposed to, you see facets of their higher qualities and go, okay, well, this guy, my dad's best friend, who I call my Uncle Joe, he's pretty awesome. I want to be like him. He does all of these things that I really like. He talks to me like I'm a person, not a infant
child.
Military specifically. They're just recognizing the qualities that create the best version of themselves in mimicry.
Yeah.
We call it monkey see, monkey do. When I go to the center and interact with the kids, the boys follow me whatever I'm doing, and they ask a billion questions trying to suss out what it is that I'm doing in order to determine whether or not the thing that I'm doing is cool and if they really want to learn how to do it.
They're like, is that Sasquatch or is that a teacher? Let's follow him a while and find out.
Yeah.
You're one tall, dude.
Yeah.
You're walking around. Is this what Goliath felt like?
It's interesting because they all come up to like my knee or my mid thigh.
All right, fellas. Hey, sorry I can't stay for too long. I got to get the boys ready for church and stuff. But God bless you. Love you guys.
Good to see you, man.
Great talk, man. I hope to stay longer next time. But peace out, hombres. God bless.
God bless. That's such a good Wookiee. Oh man.
Yeah, he is really good at that. He also does a really good Trump impression.
I can totally see that.
Yeah.
You said something though that about the kids, because that line of thought was just on it. Is that going back to the original video that you brought up and that whole thing that's going on? We're called to be peacemakers, right? And made me think of something that Jerry Adams said, where he was making the distinction between peacekeepers and peacemakers,
right? And
the argument essentially that he brought forward, which I think is right, and I never even thought about it, was that the peacekeepers are I just want to keep the peace. The peacemakers they make the peace, where essentially that you're engaging in said thing. Because I felt that with the vaccine, the masks, all that whole thing was, I felt engaged to speak what I thought, not to just to hear myself talk, but to actually connect with people that it bridges the gap. And that's really hard to do, right?
Yeah,
it's really hard to do, because sometimes you're going to have to go to the right. Sometimes you're going to have to go to the left. And what I mean by that is that, maybe you can just say that's the element. Sometimes I'm going to have to lean, for lack of a better word, the compassionate side, even though it's always going to be compassionate. But sometimes in other words, there's a time where you need to give a hug. This person needs a hug. And another time, this person needs a wake-up call. And to have that internal trust through God, it takes time. And, but to stay on the main thing that I want to say was that the asking the questions is that, ICE, get the fuck out. What is ICE? Why is ICE even here? How, in other words, the more you get to the place, instead of arguing, my unsolicited advice to people who are really caught up in the argumentative side is the shifting into, becoming not fully, but the good aspects, of a lawyer, or, from the aspect of asking questions like a child, why, what's this? ICE is something that I believe was created because that our immigration policy has been screwed up for decades, right? So you're having not the greatest solution to a problem that was already there. In other words, that if our immigration policy was locked in on, we wouldn't need ICE. It wouldn't even be a thing. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It stands for Immigration and Customs Enforcement, which is basically, originally it was customs enforcement, which was monitoring the things that come into our country from out of our country. Originally, those things were items, not people. Immigration got folded into the customs enforcement because they run in similar circles, so it made more sense for it to be all together.
Wasn't it all formed though right after 9/11?
Yes,
ICE?
ICE itself was formed after 9/11. It was a sort of a response to the melting pot that we've always believed America to be boiling over.
Yep.
Because immigration has always been a factor of the United States government, because we are all immigrants technically. We all came over here and established a government as a people that did not originally begin in this continent.
Yeah, I think to me, I mean, even looking at that is like, to me, the greatest argument was like to those who say, just welcome everybody in, we're one big family kind of angle, is that, would you welcome a stranger into your house? I really think that's it's the greatest way to simplify it, where it's like, you should want people to come to the country, but then the question becomes, what is our country? Right. And like, who do you want in? And ultimately it brings you back to the why. Like, what do we believe? What is our core ethos as a country? And I believe that we've kind of lost that collectively.
Agreed.
And that's because when we're locked in on that, that's where I think there's this, which has led me to God, because you get to that why, and then you'll be able to connect with other people, and that spreads. It's kind of like, not to go, I have to go there because I always go like to the movie Braveheart, right? Where like always have to have a movie reference, where it's just like, you have to have that, those lights, and Braveheart being that one person where he infects all of these people, where it's like, this is what we stand for. This is what we believe to the death. Right. And there's a loving energy. It's not just kind of like there's a unification behind it. We believe this, and this. But if
because
we're all
it's
fractured,
for the good of all of us.
Correct. Yes. And when you're locked in on that, you're unstoppable, because it's even in death, And to your point before, Daniel, I do think that it is an external force, right? I mean, we all have these thoughts, these attempts at self-defeating thoughts at different levels, or self-defeating by lust or pride or whatever. And I think the problem becomes when we identify with those, and that's why we aim to identify with the thoughts of what Christ shared with us, right? Here comes this thought. Well, what would Christ say about this thought? Right? Like, so, and day by day, and I've really reflected on the idea of like, it's not, I try to do it versus letting go, where it's like, it's kind of, I feel like a big part of it is just not identify. It's not believing the thoughts, and God does the rest. It's hard to really, because for a long time it's like, no, I got to do all these things. I got to go to church. And I've watched so much content. It's like, yeah, you can do all those things, but if you're not, you can know a lot about Christ, but not know him. I've heard that so much growing up, and I'm really starting to grasp that a lot more. I don't, and I've been checked a few times on the calls because I think the ego comes out, but it's like, no, Christ did the work. All we have to really do is just believe. And like,
Amen.
The believe aspect is not, I'm going to believe, harder. No, it's like, ask questions. Why? Why is this? Why was this written?
It's not Tinkerbell.
Yeah. Why? Like, because
Come to me as a child.
Yeah, it
Right.
really is.
Yeah. Come to me as a child. Like, and what's the other verse? There's something in Revelations. I think it's in Revelations at least. Why do you call me Lord, Lord? Like, you don't even know me. And it's like, yeah, cool. You've called me Lord your whole life, but you don't even know me.
And why is that?
Why is that?
That's what he's asking.
Oh yeah. It's like,
It's not a condemnation.
no,
It's a question.
absolutely not.
Hmm.
Yeah, God and I don't. God does not condemn. God does not condemn. God does not coerce. God rebukes. He corrects from a place of love, and that's what we're called to do with one another, right?
Yes.
Like I even when bad stuff happens, my wife and I were reading Job right now, and it's a hard book to read. You know, it's just flat out. It's just hard to read.
It is.
But God is not condemning. He sees something like words are amiss right now. I worked all night, so my apologies.
You're good, dude.
But he is getting something out of Job
Yes.
that the enemy, like, because he lets Satan or Satan do these things to Job without taking his life. Like that was the one kind of thing, like, don't take his life. And it was to pull out that bit of ego that was still there, I think. Like squeeze it out of him. At least that's what I see when I read Job. And that God is there to shape us like a potter is a clay pot, or a weaver with making a tapestry, thread by thread. Sometimes you got to throw it away. Sometimes you got to put it in the fire. And sometimes the fire is what hardens us. But it sucks.
Yes. Now, on that note, that actually fits very well with what Michael was talking about before between peacemaker and peacekeeper.
Yeah.
In our lives, God is a peacemaker. Going to put us through a bunch of stuff, insert himself and his representatives into our existence, change things, because that's what a maker does. They create. So they change something into something else. Change things for the better. And then perhaps the theory then is we, as the children of God, are to be the peacekeepers. We take the peace that God has made and we sustain it. We protect it. And if necessary, we defend it. Just a sudden thought I had of listening to what you were saying.
The question is how to defend it. Do we take another's life?
He's shown us.
If he did show us.
Even the Bible says if necessary and if called to. So it shouldn't be it's a little bit woo-woo, but it shouldn't be a decision that we individually make. In the Bible, there are points where it's been determined by God that certain individuals should cease to exist, should be taken off of the earth. So perhaps it's less whether or not we think so and whether or not it's divine mandate. Hard to say.
I think the key is following God, like, and it's aligning yourself with truth day by day. So, because I really do believe in revelation, I think it's revealed as you grow closer to God. It's on God's timeline, you know.
Yep.
So, the more that you grow closer to truth, the more you will see what is needed to be done, because that's the other thing too, is that it's really internal. Kingdom of heaven is within. It's not going, and that's the crazy part of this whole world that we're in, is that everybody's going to be telling you what to do and to really rely internally. And that means you choose, who do you trust? Who do you know? And you could trust the wrong person and all that. And ultimately it comes back to God, right? Don't trust in man, but there's going to be times where you have to trust in men. Not ultimately, but
Right.
if
That's
I
the
speak,
nuance.
yes, like, you know, if my dad says he's going to do something, I trust he's going to do it, right? Like, I'm not going to second guess it and doubt, oh, is he going to do this thing? And maybe that's not the greatest example, but yeah, that was the distinguishing part. You know, if you're going to run a company, you have to trust that the people that you work with are going to come through. And you also have
Yep.
to trust they're not going to come through, right? So it's like you have to be able to adapt. But I think that's really the key thing. The as you more aligned in truth, you grow into trusting yourself, right? You know, versus trusting all these different voices that sound confident externally, and maybe to your point before, to say the right things outside, Lord, you know, people say it, right?
Mhm.
But inwardly they're broken.
And the truth of the matter is, we're all broken on the inside.
Correct. That's the other, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Back to
And that's,
humanity.
yeah. And that's one of the things that turned me away from Christ, or from God and religion, and for so long, was the whole holier than thou mentality that is rampant. And it was such a breath of fresh air to actually find men, your guys' selves, that realize that no, we are flawed.
Yep.
And it's okay.
Yep.
And Christ died for us, and
Yep.
our sins are forgiven. It doesn't mean continue to do the same sin over and over and over and
Yes.
over and over again. That's not repentance. But it does mean that we will continue to fall. And like the mayor, like the individual that ran into the ICE officer, like the ICE officer,
Yes.
because every single person involved in the situation are flawed humans.
Yep.
And that we must give grace to, not hatred to.
Yep.
Grace to.
Agreed.
Yep.
It sucks. I hate lives being lost, and
Yep.
this is coming from someone that unfortunately has seen lots of lives lost.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't hurt any less every single time.
Yep.
Heavy subjects.
Yeah, man.
I will say though, the amount of how it's all over the place, media's blasting this story. You know, my gut is just that it's used by some, you know, high
exploit the
principles and, you know, to
Mhm.
divide. Just another tool to divide, because, you know, like I've said, I've seen all of the people who I believe what their view is going to be on this, and the other side, what their view is going to be on that. And it's like, it just falls into the same, you know, more division, more of that. And I think that, you know, every so often I see some voices on these topics who just say things that it just like, you clicked it. The left can't argue it, the right. And when I say the left and right, you know, they really are the same sides, the two different wings of the same bird. You know, the first time I heard Republican in name only, I love that word. That was like a meme of a week for me. It's like, yeah, they're like, I love that. I think I'm a Republican, but not like the Republican out there. It's like, you know, and that's what I would strive to be. What are we conserving with the word conservative, right? It's like you're conserving something. There's some values that have stuck around so deep. You know, it's like the classic meme where it's like, it's 2026. After what? What was 2026 years ago? So there's something there, right? Like that we're calling it that. So, but I think it requires wisdom and inner reflection. And it's like the words that you said, right? I trust the person more that who comes at it through humility, it's so come on and say, get the fuck out of here. That's not unifying anything,
Certainly not helping.
It's certainly not helping. And again, even with that, coming at it with grace, where it's like, who knows what this governor is? Who knows how many calls this guy's getting in? And, who knows who's in his ear and all that, So it's like, personally, unsolicited advice again, don't listen to this guy. He's listen to sense. Like, listen to him, but listen, like, don't just because he's the governor, right? Like, reflect on it, use your common sense, right? And like, listen to opposing views. That's why I love like PBD podcast, because he was one of the first podcasts that I saw when the whole vaccine thing was going on, that he was welcoming those opposing views. I want to hear a person who's so for it, who's credentialed, and who's so against it, who's credentialed, right? And I want them to go at it, and that's what we should facilitate. And the same thing with this, right?
I think you should put into perspective your own personal questions. Everyone has to ask themselves things. For example, when I was in college 30 years ago, I asked myself, I was living in Kentucky. I'd never shot a gun in my life. Didn't know how to use them. I mean, I think I shot like a 22 once, but that was like a rifle at a camp, and it was one time. I had never fired a handgun. I didn't know how to defend myself except with maybe a little bit of martial arts experience. But questions were coming up with what would happen if a criminal broke into your home and was threatening to rape your wife, kill your children, and kill you. Would you shoot them in the leg, save their life? Because as a Christian, I was thinking, well, I don't want to take their life because they might go to hell. And isn't it my place to save lives and create peace? Well, what if they're going to kill you and rape your wife and kill you and kill your kids? And I'm thinking, I don't know. And for years, I wrestled with this idea of, do I defend myself? Do I defend other people? Should I take another life? And it really comes down to what you choose to agree with. Now, I believe that we are not called to kill people. Murder is wrong. The Bible tells us that we shouldn't have an intention that we want to murder people. It's sinful. It's wrong. To take another life is wrong. But if it's taking a life in self-defense or in war times, where that's your service duty, or as a police officer who is either defending their lives or the lives of other people, that's questions you have to answer for yourselves. And it can be spiritual. I mean, you can take the holy roller hierarchy and say, I won't even pick up a gun. I won't even, take a life or put myself in a position where I would take a life.
We discussed
don't
this.
Become a cop.
Gandhi actually wrote about this, and we discussed it like a couple months back, because and there was more writings that he had on it, at least from what I've read from him. And there's people who won't ever pick a gun, and there's the element of pride to that. Look how, not all, but essentially the distinction that he made is there's people who are cowards who preach nonviolence, and those are essentially the worst. And then he was a fan of the Spartan warriors, Gandhi was, and he's like, there's a union here. There's something, this has more power. Essentially, there's a brotherhood. There's more love here. But he says, even in that, right, even in self-defense, right, like, and I'm with you on that, right? Like, self-defense to me is like, if someone enters my house, they're good luck, right?
Yes.
Because that's, to me, there's no real discussion. When you're out in the world and you're having this, like, you see even like this thing that's so, big, you're seeing kind of different sides, right?
Yes.
But like, it's really not as much arguing, even though there are people out there who do it, when someone enters your house, right, and they're murdered. Like, that's self-defense. most of the time, right? Very limited, but that's why you're not going to see too many of those out in the public sphere. But he also says that there's still an element of fear behind that. That he's saying that you're protecting yourself, you're putting yourself over that other person, and I think that's something, it's still something I reflect on, right? Because I've put that at peace where it's like self-defense in my home, it's non-negotiable, but I still aim to get to that place where I do think that you can, not all the time, and that's why I'm still wrestling with it, but there's something just incredibly powerful about turn the cheek. And it's not as simple as turn the cheek from just turn it. I really think much of the time you can disarm people with your presence on how God works through you. And
Very
until
true.
you're there, at least, it's, to me, there's fear and cowardice, and there's stand up and have courage, but it's still kind of elements of ego. I think when God fully takes control, it's not you doing it. And that's a really hard place to get to. I think, you hear stories, like I think we've discussed Hacksaw Ridge. Like that to me is an example of that. It's far and few between, just like, I'm not going to kill anybody, but I'm here to fight. Just not how you want me to. Like it gives me goosebumps when I think about stuff like that. Walk your own path, but it's God controlling it in a sense. Like when God controls it, you're going to walk your own path that's uniquely to you.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah,
Which God has made before you.
I went through this progression when I started reading self-improvement books. I was looking for someone to save me. And then I realized, oh, I'm the only one that can save myself. And now I'm at a point where I am my own savior, but not through me, through Christ.
Through Christ. Yep.
And I think that's where I'll stay. I think that's a good place to stay.
Sounds good.
It is.
That's a good place to wrap this up too. Based on what Michael was just talking about, I think I've got a subject for next time as well.
Sweet.
We'll get into, but for now, let's say our goodbyes, guys. We'll start with Michael. Where can people find you, bud?
Find me on YouTube. Just type in my name and you'll find it from there.
Yes. John, you have anywhere you want to publicly tell people to find you in case they want to talk?
I'm on X. J.S. Webster, I think author something. I can't remember. Yeah, you can find me on X. Just type in J.S. Webster. I'm sure I'll pop up on there.
And finally, Jonathan, who we need to let go to bed.
I'm still awake, guys. I'm still awake. I'm on all the socials, the _ wellness dad. Happy to chat about anything, guys and gals.
Yep. And you can find me on X at Mr. DP Riley. I also have started a Patreon that I'm going to try and do some content for. I have some more personal one-on-one discussions with folks and maybe some of you guys who join. And of course, you'll find me here on the Whimsyland channel, randomly talking about books and hosting Coffee and Christ. I'm just going to end it here, as I always do, with Get Thee to Church. We'll see you next time.